Hello, everyone. Thank you for joining our webinar here on finding the right laboratory glassware washer. Hopefully everyone can hear and see me okay. If you can't, or if you're having any issues with the sound or video, please put it in the chat on whatever platform you're streaming on. We can get that figured out right away. My name is Zach Zakaib. I'm a product manager here at Labconco. So my job is just to make sure that I am following all of what's going on in the laboratory glassware market, making sure our customers know about the product, and also making sure that they have the right product for their lab. So I spend a lot of time every day talking about laboratory glassware washers, applications, inserts, glassware. So we figured it would be a really great webinar to put together just the basics of laboratory glassware washers. So finding the right one, things to consider when you're just kind of starting your journey, looking into them. Great features for labs, the difference between finding a laboratory glassware washer versus finding a home glassware washer and putting it into a laboratory, as well as some features of some of the products that we offer and how we overcome some of the challenges in labs. Like I said before, the chats are open on all of our streaming platforms. If at any point you have a question or a comment, please feel free to put it in there. We have a couple people looking through the comments as well, just to make sure that things are being answered and coming up to my stream, just so that we can talk about it. Without further ado, we can get started. So let me share my screen here really quickly. There we go. So when you're first embarking on finding a laboratory glassware washer, whether you are a a researcher, or you're a lab tech who wants to bring it to your researcher, a PI, a purchasing manager, there are some things that you do have to take into consideration that people often forget. So one of those, just to kick us off, um, sometimes you are not trying to assess whether or not you need to replace your washer. Sometimes you're trying to assess whether or not you should hand wash your glassware or use a machine. There are a number of things that you can take into consideration. We have these conversations a lot throughout the day of labs that either have a current lab assistant that they're working on utilizing for research, or they're a growing facility and they're trying to keep up with the number of tubes and beakers and flasks that they have that are piling up, and nobody can really get to them because they are so busy. So why would you end up getting a glassware washer? It really comes down to control and throughput. So standard operating procedures are huge in laboratories. And the more that we can standardize and the more variables we can control for, the better research that we will actually be doing, because it's not introducing things that we'll have to figure out down the line if our research didn't work out the way we thought it would. We can validate our glassware cleanliness, so ensuring that our glassware is washed with the same amount of detergent in the same way, reaching the same temperature every time, allows us to make sure that we can not only make sure that our research is sound, but that we can prove that to other people as well. A lot of times, hand washing will introduce things like broken glassware, longer time to wash, more water use, more resources, and often be more expensive as well. On the right here, we have just a nice layout to show the differences between washing glassware by hand and machine washing of your laboratory glassware. You can take a look at all of the specs here, but at the bottom line basically shows you that the total amount of water and the total amount of time is cut down for your laboratory, meaning that you can save either the person washing or the resources needed to wash for something else in your lab, whether that be money, time, or people. Sometimes we find that you are not competing with a glassware washer versus hand washing situation. Sometimes we find that you're trying to make the decision between a residential glassware washer and a laboratory glassware washer. So I always like to cover the differences between those two and some of the drawbacks of using a residential glassware washer. So if we think about what we have in a laboratory, we often have a lot of things that are not cup, plate, and bowl shaped. So if you're thinking about flask, pipettes, tubes, things like that, residential glassware washers are not designed to wash any of those things. So when we are trying to hold our glassware steady and keep it from knocking into each other or breaking in the cycle, we have inserts available throughout all of the laboratory glassware market that can hold your glassware in place. So that is kind of the biggest factor at play here. We're maintaining a much higher temperature in a laboratory glassware as well. So if you're working with any hard to remove substances or any biological substances that need a certain heat level, we can reach those in a glassware washer for the lab. We can't reach those for a glassware washer that's meant for a home because it's not designed to do that. If we're talking about chemicals, a lot of chemicals that are used in labs are not compatible with the interiors of residential laboratory glassware washers. So we can either damage the inside components of the machine, the pumps themselves, or not control for cross-contamination, which is a massive drawback in residential washers. So a good laboratory glassware washer will have two pumps, one for the inlet, one for the outlet. Because you're working with so many different things that need to be kept separately, those dual pumps are going to prevent cross-contamination as well, making sure that every single time you wash your glassware, that glassware is going to be as clean as you can possibly get it. There is no forced air drying in a residential glassware, a residential dishwasher. which may not seem like a big issue until you start to think of all of the narrow neck glassware that you use in the lab. So anything from volumetric flasks to test tubes, pipettes, Erlenmeyer flasks. What that's doing is creating an environment that traps water, traps moisture. And that inevitably, when you're putting it on the shelf or waiting for it to dry, can also take on contaminants. And then finally, the most obvious one is that these residential washers are not made for what you would be doing in a lab, and therefore the warranty is void. So a lot of times when they end up in labs, they're treated more as consumables rather than capital equipment because they are designed to be used and then switched out when they've no longer been able to complete their job. Here at Labconco, we account for a lot of these common laboratory challenges with three main types of glassware washers. So we've got our SteamScrubber, our FlaskScrubber, and our FlaskScrubber Vantage series. From just first look, they do all look very similar. I promise you, they all have different features, and we'll go over each one of those. Just know that we have options for every single type of lab environment, minus a few applications that we'll cover at the end that may not be compatible with some of our seals or plumbing in our glassware washers. So we will start with our SteamScrubber. Our SteamScrubber is our general lab washer. So if I'm working with things that have wide mouths, I'm working with glassware that doesn't need to be super validated, I'm just looking for something that will clean and provide a dependable clean for a lot of glassware and keep it from breaking. This SteamScrubber option is going to be the best option to at least start with and look into. Our SteamScrubbers come with a standard upper and lower rack. So this would be very similar to what everybody is used to for something like a residential washer, where it's just an open rack, and it does fit all of our accessories in it. So things like test tube holders, pin inserts, baskets, things like that. The accessories that would not fit in this kind of standard configuration for those racks would be things that spray water or air into the glassware. In order to account for the water spraying, the spindles, we do have upper and lower injection spindle racks that fit into this washer. So it does support that spraying of water inside of your glassware. The difference would be that you have to provide that on the configuration side before you actually place your order or get the washer in your lab. All of our washers are also available in freestanding and under counter options. So in all of these pictures that you'll see, these are the freestanding units. They're finished on the sides. They've got stainless steel. They're mostly meant for labs where the washer will be out and about, not underneath a counter. For our under counter options, we do have sort of unfinished sides with more insulation, and those would be installed directly underneath the counter, similar to what we see in residential. One important note on that is that if you are designing a lab, planning your own lab, or buying equipment, and you have modular lab furniture, so things that can move around underneath your tabletops, maybe a unicell cabinet, things like that, we always recommend to do a freestanding unit because it's finished off on the sides. And that way you have a little bit more flexibility with what is on the sides of your washer, and you can move those things around the lab without exposing any of the insulation or just sort of creating a space where dust and debris can collect. So our next model up is called our FlaskScrubber. So our FlaskScrubber is designed to get inside of the flasks with both water and forced air. The reason why we're doing this is mostly for that narrow neck glassware like we talked about earlier. So our graduated cylinders, our Erlenmeyer flasks, volumetric flasks. This washer is only going to come with a lower rack, but we do have upper racks available. The reason for that is because most people who are buying a FlaskScrubber have tall glassware like we see here in the picture. So we make the lower rack standard. The upper rack can be added on very easily. These spindles are not only going to inject your steam and water inside the glassware, getting you a better clean, but it's also going to have an injection dry cycle, which is super important when you're trying to increase your workflow and make sure that by the time your cycle is done, you'll be able to open up the washer, take your glassware out, and then put it directly in the cabinet without ever having to place it on a drying rack or take paper towels and dry out the inside of your glassware. So this actually saves a lot of time. Make sure that your glassware is clean inside and out. And we find that a lot of labs, this is the sweet spot for them, where they'll start with the FlaskScrubber and then customize it to whatever they need in the lab. And then finally, we have our FlaskScrubber Vantage. And this is just going to be one step up from our FlaskScrubber. Most of the applications for this are going to need really controlled processes and validation. So chemistry and analytical labs are really what this washer is designed for, but we see a lot of these in industry and biology as well, depending on the needs of sort of what they need to control and what they're working with. This unit features HEPA-filtered forced air drying, which means that if I'm looking for glassware that is free of dust and debris or any sort of contaminant, that HEPA filter is going to catch it before that air goes into the glassware. We also have automatic detergent and rinse aid dosing. So when we're working with a lab that really needs to control the exact amount of detergent that goes into their system, these detergent dosers are actually kept over in that side cabinet. So one important note about this unit is that the side cabinet actually extends the width of the washer. So if you're planning a lab space or looking into sort of your options for your lab, this is actually going to take up more space in the width. That cabinet holds the automatic detergent and rinse aid dosing. So that will be able to feed directly into the washer. And then if you are purchasing a SteamScrubber or a FlaskScrubber that does not have that side cabinet, we do still have options for that dosing. It would just need to be stored somewhere else. So something we've seen a lot is customers who place their washer next to their sink cabinet. The dosers and the detergent bottles themselves are held underneath the sink, and those tubes run directly into the washer right next door. So there are options available even without going into the FlaskScrubber Vantage. Another option within the FlaskScrubber Vantage series that we find labs really enjoy is the conductivity sensor. So this allows us to get a conductivity reading of our inlet water and our outlet water. And we're going to compare those two values to each other. So that conductivity reading is going to tell me exactly how much debris or how many contaminants are coming off of my glassware. And when those two values meet, we can validate that that rinse water is free of debris and contaminants. It comes with a standard lower injection spindle rack, just like our FlaskScrubber, but just like the FlaskScrubber, we can add on upper racks as well. We do have a question. So if we get one with an upper rack, is it easy to remove when we need to wash the taller glassware? Yes, it is. So all of our racks are designed to be both raised and lowered and removed at the same time. So it's pretty easy to see in this picture if you know what you're looking for. But right here on the side, our racks are designed with a notch system, where if I need maybe some extra space or need to remove it altogether, I can either lift the rack up and slide it to the front to lock it in place, or lift it up and remove it altogether and slide those side racks back in to free up space for larger glassware. We also have another question. Can these be mounted to the floor to keep heavy shelves from tipping the unit when out? We don't have any stock solutions for mounting to the floor for freestanding units. For under counter, typically that would keep it in place. But with our under counter, there are definitely some points where we can work with our engineers and work with our teams to provide some counterpoints and brackets to keep that from happening. Some of the things that we control for with our construction and our design, We are fully aware that we are running some of the harshest contaminants and chemicals through these lab washers. So we're using 304 stainless steel for all of the internal components. We have two pumps to reduce cross-contamination. So I mentioned this earlier. That helps you make sure that your inlet water and your outlet water are not sharing the same source for trapping those contaminants. And then finally, we have a 2-year warranty on all of our washers. One thing to consider for Labconco washers, it's not standard across sort of all the laboratory markets, but one thing to look for is if the washer is required to use a certain detergent for the warranty. So personally, we only have a requirement for low or non-foaming detergent that's meant for an automatic glassware washer. So as long as you're meeting those criteria, the 2-year warranty is still in place and still active. This means that if you're using some sort of detergent, maybe something like an Alkanox in your lab, which is a very popular brand, you can continue using that in your washer and not have to rewrite your SOP or any of your validation procedures. Within our washers, on the front of each model, there is a touch screen. This touch screen is going to be incredibly valuable for ensuring that you know your cycles that are being run and anything that's really going on in the washer. So our CleanWorks OS system is going to provide you real-time feedback on what step of your program you're on, an estimated runtime, as well as some sensor readouts and some diagnostic options. If, let's say, you take a look at it and something's not right with your glassware washer, we can actually control the different valves and provide a built-in diagnostics test to pinpoint what might be happening. Sometimes it's a piece of broken glass or a spatula that's gotten caught. Sometimes it's a little bit more serious. Maybe something has clogged or something has maybe moved or shifted a little bit in the washer. So this is a really good way to figure out and pinpoint where we might be experiencing issues or changes in our wash cycle. We do have data logging, so we can review, store, transfer any sort of cycle data. And that's great for all of our validation procedures, as well as proving to maybe other regulatory bodies that we are doing this and keeping track of this. There are password protection levels, meaning that you can lock down programs, making sure that, let's say, everybody's kind of been here before where a lab assistant goes in and changes a setting, doesn't alert anybody, and then we find out 2 years later that we've actually been washing outside of validation protocol. So we can lock down those programs and make sure that they run the same way every single time. We do have a question. Are the internal hoses Teflon free? I can take a look at our engineering prints and make sure that I know that for sure. So if I take down your name, I can get back to you on that and reach out with that information. Awesome. Within that CleanWorks OS system that we just talked about, it does come with a number of pre-programmed factory programs. This is one thing that you really want to make sure that you have the capability on your washer if you're running a lot of different experiments or a lot of different components within your glassware washer. So I always like to tell people that there's not just one way to cook a steak. Sometimes you have to do it a different way. This allows you to not only program your own, but have out-of-the-box options that account for all of the most common laboratory items. So we have our easy version right out of the box, but if you would like that more control, those options do exist. So we have everything from a plastic cycle, so that doesn't get as hot as our other cycles, meaning that you'll preserve the integrity of your plasticware. We have Eco Wash cycle, which actually uses considerably less water for your lab. So if you are in a lab that might be working towards a green certification, or you're building a lab that needs to comply with certain regulations, that would be a really great wash to spec out and make sure that it fits within the regulations you're trying to hit. We also have certain things like a dry only cycle. So sometimes you do have to hand wash glassware. And then where does it go when you're done with it? It goes right there on a drying rack in your lab. This way you can actually use your washer as a dryer, place your glassware in, and do a forced air dry to really speed up that process so that the next person who needs that glassware can use it quicker. Just to make sure that everyone is aware of kind of where these numbers come from. We are testing these on, I believe, a 115-volt unit, but obviously total time and dry time and time to heat water is all dependent on electrical configuration, and we'll go over that in a few slides as well. We have a question from Alan. How long do the diagnostic tests take typically? The diagnostic tests, let me go back. So these tests can all be run individually. Depending on what test you're running, it may take anywhere from 10 seconds to a minute. That's typically what we see depending on kind of the feature being tested. To run all of them, I would say maybe anywhere from 5 to 10 minutes if you were to sit there and just select them one after another. And then you can also export all of that data as well after. Is there a model designed for the oil industry? So you have actually touched on one of my final slides. We have a we don't have a great configuration for things like biofuels or oils. However, if you have more information on sort of what you're washing and your wash protocols, we can absolutely figure out if our washers are right for you. So we've got kind of two schools of thought here. Some labs just like to take their glassware, place it in the washer without pre-washing. That is one method that we really can't support, especially in the oil or biofuels production. Some labs already have a really robust workflow for taking care of what's kind of attached to that glassware. And in that case, we can absolutely just make sure that everything's compatible with the seals and the plumbing, and make sure that you can wash that glassware in there. I do have a message from one of my engineers. So our hoses are made from EPDM, so it's a synthetic rubber, but it's not Teflon. So we did confirm that. Some of the features that we really tout for sort of ease of use within the lab. Flexible spindle racks, and I'll show an animated GIF later on about how those kind of work. Just know that any of our configurations for our spindle racks can be customized. So here in this photo, we have a left side configuration for graduated cylinders. You'll see that they sit at an angle, so the water comes out, but they also have a rotating spindle head in there to make sure that every surface of the inside of that graduated cylinder gets washed well. You'll see that the right side is actually our just normal spindle configuration with glassware holders. So if you, let's say, are washing an Erlenmeyer flask, you can just place that Erlenmeyer flask down into the glassware holder, and it will hold it in place and make sure that it doesn't shift around too much during washing. We have already touched on the adjustable height for the upper racks. This is just a better photo of that. We've really designed these so that you can use one hand on each side of the rack and lift them up pretty easily with your thumb pushing it out if you need to remove the rack itself. We did get a question about the diagnostics for what the next step after doing the test and you get an error message. So there are a couple of options. If, let's say, the diagnostic points to something like a clog or the wash bar isn't spinning correctly, that would be something that the user can fix on their own. Maybe remove the sump screen, look down in there, make sure that everything's working properly. If it's a more intense problem, something that you need to pull someone else in, we have a full product service department who's really skilled in our washer designs and our washer use. So reaching out to them is always a great option because if we've performed the diagnostic test on the user side, they can pretty easily pinpoint what's going on and determine if it's something that can be fixed by the user or if we need to send a servicer out. One thing about choosing laboratory equipment is that you always want to think about what happens when that equipment is maybe used improperly or pushed past its limits. And so we have a really great product service team. And I highly advise if anybody's ever looking for help with Labconco equipment to reach out to our product service group. We do have a couple of options for heating. So here on the left, you'll see our 3-phase unit. We also have a single phase unit. On the next slide, I'll actually be talking a little bit more about that. Just know that that determines how fast your water is heating. So let's say we're comparing a 115-volt single phase unit to a 230-volt 3-phase unit. That 230-volt 3-phase unit is going to heat that water much faster, meaning that if you are really trying to push your washer into the most optimized workflow that you need for your lab, you would be able to do that faster by heating your water faster and shaving off that time in the middle. So this doesn't actually ensure that the water gets hotter, it's just the speed at which the water heats. We also have speed vent technology in our washers. So at the end of a cycle, the front door of the washer will pop open and allow those last bits of moisture to leave. So if you've ever used a dishwasher at home, you've maybe left it overnight, that temperature change from hot to room temperature can sometimes cause condensation, which completely defeats the process of forcing air into your glassware to dry it. So this just helps you account for that and make sure that your glassware is going to be dry for your next experiment. We did already touch on the electrical configurations. Just know that we do have 115-volt, 230-volt, and 230-volt 3-phase options. So if you're looking for a just standard 115-volt model, it will heat slower than the 230-volt 3-phase option. One thing to consider in these is that all of our units do need to be hardwired. They are not something that can just be plugged in. So you would need to work with an electrician. And if you run into any sort of configuration questions or anything like that, we're always here to help. We talk through that all the time with customers. What about other 3-phase configuration, maybe 380 to 400 volts? We do have options for that. So mostly what I have on this slide is just sort of our most common electrical configurations. We do have support for that, and we can always chat more about that 380, 400 volt configuration. Um, we have a rack insert configuration that is fully customizable. So this is just a video of a little bit more detail on how those rack spindle bars slide in and out. So all of your water is actually traveling through that middle arm of your rack on both the upper and the lower spindle racks. And then we have our horizontal spindle arms that can click into place and be tightened with just a thumb screw. So this is tool-free removal and customization. If I'm washing, let's say, Erlenmeyer flasks in the morning, and then I need to switch over to a forced spindle insert for test tubes, I can do that easily. I won't have to grab tools, and it will be very quick to do in the lab. We do have a ton of accessories. So when I'm talking with customers about just kind of configuring their glassware washer for their needs, generally we spend about 20% of the time talking about the washer and 80% of the time talking about the accessories. So if you're ever looking into which accessories are right for your lab, there's a couple things that we can do to jumpstart that conversation. So the first one would be knowing what glassware you're going to wash. So thinking about any of the experiments you're currently running, but also experiments that you might be running in the future. So let's say you're an academic lab and you're currently teaching microbiology, but maybe next semester or next year you might be teaching genetics or a chem lab that will have to use the same space. So just making sure that we account for all the different types of glass that might be in the glassware washer. Also, knowing any of the either brand and model number or the dimensions for your glassware is super helpful, especially when we're trying to figure out maybe what test tube insert or what basket we need to use, just to make sure that things can fit. And it's going to be a good fit that won't cause glassware to hit into each other. Um, we have a question. Can we add any accessories to the FlaskScrubber for wide mouth labware such as beakers? Yes, the FlaskScrubber and the SteamScrubber both support wide mouth holders. So we have pin inserts, we have large baskets. So depending on how wide that mouth is, and then our traditional spindles that come with the rack for the lower and upper spindle racks are actually great for just holding wide mouth glassware as well. And then regarding the electrical that needs to be hardwired, does Labconco have a plug and play type accessory? We do have a customs department. So in the past, we have run glassware washers through our customs department for, let's say, rural installations or installations where we really need that plug for install. So those are always options, and we can really tailor that customized washer to wherever it's going and whatever the needs are. So yeah, if we ever need to have that conversation, we absolutely can. How often do I need to change the Vantage series HEPA filter? HEPA filters are an interesting question because they're always dependent on sort of how much use and how much buildup they have. So the important thing with this is that this isn't something like a BSC. This is just to keep your dust and debris from entering the system. So inspecting that regularly, making sure it's not building up a lot of debris is really what you need to check for. So anywhere from maybe a year to 5 to 10 years, depending on how much you're actually using it. So some things that you can do to limit that, making sure that it is in a space that is kind of controlled for dust and contaminants. So if you're running your glassware washer in the same room as, let's say, a dryer for maybe some rags or something that you're using in industry or in the lab, that lint or dust might actually get into your HEPA filter much faster. So just thinking about the whole picture and how everything fits together as it's being used is really important for that one. For the accessories, like I said, they all fit into our system. They're all designed to work together. So let's say if I need a petri dish holder here on the bottom, on one side, a pipette holder and a basket on the other side. I can do that and make sure that I can wash all of my glassware in a nice, easy workflow rather than running 3 cycles to get all of that done. Um, it wouldn't be a glassware washer presentation without talking about the water that's in our glassware washers. So there are a couple of different options. One is that you can hook it up to your laboratory water, just coming through your cold water inlet or hot water inlet. That will provide you just basic cleaning capabilities. So you'd be able to use it just like the dishwasher that you're used to. Obviously, this doesn't fit all of the needs of every lab, so we also have connection capabilities for our RO pure water systems. And this can be anything from 1 to a few rinses at the end of a cycle. I don't recommend any more than a couple of pure water rinses or doing any of the wash with pure water, just because that is kind of a misuse of all of the water that we've worked so hard to create. So having that RO connected to your glassware washer enables you to do pure water rinses at the end of your cycle, making sure that you have spot-free glassware, that you're really getting all of the contaminants, maybe the detergent chemicals that might interfere with any experiments, and it allows you to get a better conductivity reading. Because we're looking at just the pure water in and hopefully the pure water out once our cycle is done. Um, Sometimes workflows require more than one washer. We do have solutions for that as well. So if you start to think about just the large capacity washers that are on the market, One thing that I ran into when I was managing labs is that sometimes you have a large washer, it might have 4 shelves in it. And let's say there is an issue with a rack or an issue with a heater. Unfortunately, when you have one washer, what that means is that you have 0 washers when it's broken. We've come up with a system for a stackable washer stand. This is available on all 3 of our main models. This allows you to have 2 freestanding units that work in tandem with one another. So it is balanced in such a way where it is actually the top washer is secured to the stand. And this allows you to have 2 washers operating simultaneously, 4 racks in total. And this way, if let's say you want to stagger your wash, let's say there's a workflow that you need to use multiple steps with ranges of glassware, we can do that. And then if anything were to ever go down or get clogged or need service, you're now operating at 50% capacity rather than 0% capacity. Um, Detergents are a major part of glassware washing. So rather than just focusing on the equipment, we also have to focus on the chemicals that are being used on our glassware. We do offer 3 types of detergent. They sort of cover the range of what you'll see on the market. So we have our non-foaming powder detergent. This is going to be a highly optimized laboratory detergent. So one question I get sometimes is, what's the difference between a laboratory detergent and a home detergent? Oftentimes the laboratory detergents have a lot more of the enzymes and cleaning power and chemicals that you wouldn't need for things like the lasagna that you see in a commercial for dishwashers. So these are going to be a lot more potent. And these powder detergents are going to be your just normal stick in the cup in the front of the washer types of detergents. Obviously, these present a problem when you're looking for glassware that's free of any sort of abrasion. So if you're looking for highly clear glassware, things that you're trying to maybe do analytical experiments through, we want to actually move into the low foaming liquid detergent territory. So these low foaming liquid detergents are going to be um, much more gentle on your glassware. So if I'm washing something like an old graduated cylinder in a lab that's made out of plastic, I can still use that powder. But the minute I switch over to the liquid detergent, it's going to be a much more regulated clean. So I can still use it in the cup in the front, or I can do it in the dosing that we can introduce into the machines as well. Our low foaming liquid detergent is phosphate free, which is important to remember if you are working with any sort of phosphorus measurements in your lab, or if you're working with any biologicals that may interact with phosphates in a way that you do not want for your research. Then finally, we have our neutralizing acid rinse. And that's going to come in handy for any sort of pH balancing, as well as spotting on your glassware that could present issues with your workflows. One other detergent point that I do like to point out. So when you're working with glassware and you're washing it, sometimes you'll find that your glassware has maybe some spotting or some hazing on it. This could be due to 2 different main reasons. One of those is too much detergent. So if the enzymes and the chemicals in your detergent don't have anything to interact with, sometimes they will deposit on the glassware. Sometimes it's due to too few detergent washing too little detergent in your wash cycle. And that would mean that what you're seeing is not necessarily the detergent sticking to the glassware, but it's actually your contaminants being liquefied and then placed back on the glassware by the wash cycle. So dialing your detergent levels is incredibly important when optimizing your cycles. We do have a question: what cleaning solutions can't be used that could damage the washer? So things we commonly see in labs, things like industrial detergents that are made for specific machines, maybe tunnel washers, or soaking agents that traditionally are used for hand washing or hand neutralizing. Those can present some issues. if you are sort of looking for a general rule of thumb, the one to go with is that we're looking for low foaming or non-foaming, and that it is meant for a laboratory glassware washer. So a lot of the detergents on the market will be labeled for that, and those will all be compatible with the system that we've created. Um, One thing that you do have to consider that many people forget about is that a lot of places actually regulate the temperature of the water that is coming out of your glassware washer. So we can produce water up to 199 degrees Fahrenheit or 93 degrees Celsius. That means that it is well above a lot of the regulated temperatures that we could see for different jurisdictions around the world. So we do have a drain water cooling kit. It is required to be compliant. So sometimes we see these skipped in the process of building a lab or introducing a washer. And then we find out that we need one once the inspection for the building takes place. And we find out that we're actually putting water down the drain that is too hot. So just remember to think about that anytime you're working with a sales rep or a dealer channel partner. They will almost always talk you through a cooling kit as well. If you're using any of our online resources, this will automatically be checked. Just know that if it starts to pop up and you're not really sure why, that would be why, because most jurisdictions do have this requirement. We have a question. Are these neutralizing rinse agents designed to neutralize acid residues that could come from the samples? Generally, they are not that strong, but it does provide a little bit of neutralization for pH. So if I'm working with any sort of laboratory chemical, acids, bases, caustic agents, I always want to make sure that I'm pre-rinsing my glassware or neutralizing it before it goes in the washer. So one thing that we do see a lot is that laboratories may not neutralize or pre-rinse their glassware, and when we set it upside down in the rack, it's actually dripping that chemical without being diluted onto the stainless steel or onto the rack or onto other plastic or glassware. So we always want to make sure that that is kind of part of the process. And then what's left over after that process can be handled by our detergents and our rinses as well. Um, some available documentation. So depending on where you are, what you're doing, who you have to report to, you may need some of these documents. So I always like to cover that we do have CE conformity marking. We have UL 61010-1 conformity. Anytime you need an IQ or IQ OQ document for Labconco products, they are available for free. So if you go to our website, all of our equipment has free IQ OQ. And we can also offer inhibitory residue studies as well as detergent COAs upon request. We touched on this a bit earlier. Common challenging applications, biofuels, petroleum, and cannabis production. If you are working with any of those applications, feel free to reach out to us. This isn't an automatic, no, we can't support that. But there are definitely ways that we can control for those oils and make sure that it's not destroying equipment, destroying the plumbing, and make sure that you guys are able to use a glassware washer for a very long time. Then finally, if you ever run into any sort of questions or need any help with anything, we have some resources available. So we have a glassware washer configurator on our website. This is going to allow you to see the glassware washer in 3D space, pick your different accessories, pick your different racks, and really see how everything fits together. And the great part about that is that it will actually generate a list of catalog numbers for a quote. So if you're talking with someone from Labconco or a scientific dealer, you can actually come to them and say, hey, I've already used this configurator. I think I know pretty closely what I need. Let's start going through these. So it saves a lot of time on the front end. We do have a reference library, so if you're working with any sort of specific research or samples, we have a full library of peer-reviewed publications that use our equipment. So you can always search through there and see if there's any washing protocols specific to your application, and that's across all of our products. So if you're using any of our other equipment, you can compare all of what we're what our customers are using the products for in publications. And finally, if all else fails, you can always reach out to us through phone and live chat. We always make sure that you're getting in touch with a real person. So that toll-free number actually goes to our front desk, and they will transfer to either me or product service or engineering to solve any questions. And the same goes for live chat. Those are always going to be routed to a real human being. We do have some more questions. So what type of solution can be used instead of neutralized acid? This would depend on application. So companies like Alcadox that are really skilled in laboratory detergents and rinses, they'd be able to have a whole suite of options for everything from tattoo gun sanitation to industry to analytical chemistry. So working with a company that has a lot of those options would be the best bet for that. Some individuals may use something like a vinegar rinse if it's kind of a low validation application and they're used to that. It's what they're washing their glassware with. But we don't actually support solvent rinses. That is one distinction that I do need to mention. So if you need any sort of acetone rinsing or anything like that, we can't do that automatically in our washers, but there are ways around it with that pre-washing, pre-processing that I did talk about. Um, is it available to rinse greasy residues from the glassware that could come from some samples? Um, Yes and no. So if we're working with greases, same as if you're planning out something in your home. If you were to pour, let's say, baking grease down the drain, it would go into the drain just fine. It would solidify once it cools down and once it mixes with everything. So we always have to take that into account. If it's something like a let's just say a greasy sample, you're preparing some sort of food and beverage sample in the lab, and it's a moderate to minor amount of grease. The detergents and the enzymes should be able to handle that. So it may be a detergent issue, it may be something we just have to dial in for the wash parameters, but it's never a black and white answer, unfortunately, with glassware washers, and we have application specialists available to kind of talk through that as well. This is all I had. If anybody has any questions, I would love to keep answering them. So feel free to throw those in the chat. Like I said, my name is Zach Zakhaib. You can always reach out. There will be contact information as well as just a link to the recording and some information about what we covered today. Um, like I said, feel free to contact us. We're always here to help walk through washer questions, application questions, down to either even finding accessories and parts for washers that you may already have. So some of you may already be using Labconco products. We have a ton of people that either write in or call in asking, hey, do you guys have anything for Erlenmeyer flasks, or do you guys have anything for pipettes? And we can match you up with accessories that fit into the washer that you already have. Well, with that being said, I think we can start wrapping up. I will remain on the call for a few more minutes, just in case anybody has any more questions. Feel free to throw those in the chat, and they'll come my way. But otherwise, thank you for tuning in today, and thank you for supporting Labconco. We have a question from Stephen Anderson. Can any of the glassware washers perform an acid wash for trace metal analysis glassware? We traditionally do not advise any sort of trace metal analysis glassware going into the washer, just because of the stainless steel interior and the ways that those detergents may interact. But like I said, you can always reach out for our application team to take a look at. It's not a definite no, but we do like to keep eyes on those just to make sure we're not providing a washer that may not be compatible with what you're doing.